Lots and lots of other stories going on that we're going to be talking about throughout the course of the next couple of hours, including on the front page of The Guardian, by the way, believe it or not, a story that says that there was a whole load of excess heat deaths in France to the tune of, I think it's about 5,000 and something. Let me see if I can find it for you. Because it's another one of these ridiculous climate change stories which doesn't actually bear any examination at all. France recorded more than 5,700 excess deaths during its June heat wave, according to the authorities. They say swathes of southern Europe continue to endure another record-breaking period of extreme temperatures, and they say that all sorts of people, half of the unprecedented total were recorded between 25 and 27th of June, with deaths of people aged 75 and older accounting for about 2/3 of the excess mortality. So effectively, quite a lot of older people died, as they tend to do. They're now saying they died because it was hot, but they don't know. Those who lost their lives between the 17th of June and the 7th of July died of all causes. All causes. Well, I mean, that could be anything. Luckily, we've got Jamie Jenkins here, who's a statistical genius, and he can tell us probably how they've arrived at these ridiculous figures. I mean, Jamie, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I know we weren't planning to talk about the heatwave deaths in France, but we had this rubbish the other day in Britain, didn't we? The Met Office saying that 440 people a day were dying because of the heat. And there's no way they can say that that's true.
Yeah, well, all they do, Mike, is they look at how many deaths occurred and just compared it to, say, the average for that time of year. But all the evidence normally shows that you tend to get more excess deaths in the winter months than you do in the summer months. So if the world is kind of warming up and you get warmer winters, then that'll have a reversal effect. There'll be fewer excess deaths in the winter months. But I was talking with you a few months back, I think, on this, Mike. When we have these heat waves, rather than keep banging on about the damage that the heat is causing, nobody ever talks about, let's spend some more money on air conditioning. Then you got companies, you got the government, somebody who's saying,
"Oh no, we can't do that.
Air conditioning because it takes too much electricity up. So put more air conditioning in rather than bang on about all the heat is. That's what I say."
Yeah, well, exactly right. I mean, no, you can't have air conditioning as well because it's bad for the planet, apparently. As I was saying this last week when it was really hot, that if all the things that we've been doing for the last 30 or 40 years to supposedly slow down the increased in temperatures on the planet, if none of that's working, we might as well give up, might we?
Oh yeah, Mike. When I look out my window, I got loads of windmills on top of the mountain, but it doesn't have an effect, does it? A massive effect. And no, you've got the UK, you've got Europe, you've got some of the highest electricity prices. Pivoting into Andy Burnham, actually, Mike. I think he stood up outside Downing Street the other day, didn't he? And he was on about devolution and every postcode needs to have improvement and things. And he talked about the deindustrialization of Britain. Well, loads of jobs have gone in this country. They've been outsourced to other parts of the world. And there's no way we're ever going to get manufacturing back in Britain when our electricity prices are 4 times what they are in the United States. We're one of the highest in Europe, Mike. And why is that? Because of this bloody race to net zero that they talk about. It's absolute bonkers. And now that Miliband's been put into the Foreign Office rather than this net zero department, let's see if there's any change there. But I can't imagine there will be, Mike. But you're right on this one. That it's just absolute bonkers. Another week, another nonsense bonkers story.
Well, this is the trouble. I mean, as I was saying earlier today, it looks as though that we've now got the reverse government of Andy Burnham, where he's just going to go beep, beep, beep every 5 minutes as the bus reverses back. And he undoes all the things that Keir Starmer did. Like, for example, today we've got the early release of prisoners. He's paused all that, so he's reviewing all that. So he doesn't want to let anybody out. He's gone back to a £2 bus cap, which Keir Starmer put up to £3, and he's now gone back to £2, which is what the Tories did. And then the reversal on the VAT on electricity actually is not going to help that many people. One, because most people's energy is powered by gas and or oil. And it's only 90 pence a week anyway.
Yeah, well, let's unpick a few of those ones, Mike. So on the electricity, the energy thing. So let's remind ourselves what's been going on the last couple of years. So obviously Reeves and Starmer have gone after the people who are working with a lot more tax. They've increased the national insurance. Obviously, we've talked about that. But one of the things that people don't realise as much, which is why the governments do it, is they haven't been changing the income tax threshold as well. So more and more people get caught up into higher rates of tax. So if we look at the average worker in the country and what they were paying in tax in the year before the government came in, the Labour government, and then we compare that because of the amount of tax they're paying through national insurance and income tax. Now, the average worker, Mike's paying about £888 more a year.
Right.
So £45, which is only over 6 months because there's no guarantee it's going to roll over. £45 versus £888. They're literally giving you absolutely nothing back, Mike. So that's the first thing on there. Then, if we unpick, then say the bus fares as well, literally it's going to cost about 400 million. They're talking about paying for this one, Mike, rather than give more money over abroad. They're going to loan money to foreign countries as well. Well, are we ever going to get that money back? I can't imagine we're going to get this money back either, are we? And so the reversal of Starmer, the most telling thing was that that useless politician. Well, at least Burnham's got rid of him. That Darren Jones, wasn't he? The bloke who's on Question Time, reckon.
He was useless, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was the one on Question Time saying that most of the people coming over on these boats are women and young children, just to complete making it all up. And the big telling thing is he was quite close to Starmer, and he was in government, wasn't he? And then he's come out because he got sacked, criticising Burnham's government because of this VAT cut on energy, saying, oh, they're paying for using the digital ID money that was unfunded in the first place. And you just think, well, you just absolute shambles of the last 2 years. You were doing all of these policies nobody wanted. They weren't paid for. And basically, you've got a government, and you're right. What has gone on the last 2 years, if all Burnham is going to be doing now is unpicking, sacking all of the cabinet, and then reversing all of the stuff, it's just, we're going backwards, Mike.
Well, that's the trouble. And it didn't actually make him look very clever, did it? Because it looked as though because he was pumping this digital ID plan, as though it was all, absolutely ready to go, completely and utterly kosher, and everybody was in agreement about it. And now he's making out, well, actually, we hadn't worked out how to pay for it.
Yeah, and I think he flew out to Australia, Mike, as well. When that
he did,
they're talking about the social media ban. And the thing on the digital ID, we still got to be careful on that one, right? Whether or not it's fully scrapped or not, because the social media ban for children, well, if they're going to enforce that, how are they going to prove that you're an adult? Are you going to need to have some digital ID online to prove that you're an adult? So, but yeah, I think it's just one of the other bizarre, nobody's going to disagree, Mike, that you want to get rid of homelessness and rough sleeping. But for Burnham to come out and say, literally, I'm going to go in there now and I'm going to stop rough sleeping across Britain as one of his first flagship. I think people would have rather him said, I'm going to go in there now and stop the boats. But if you look at Greater Manchester, I think in 2010, they do some surveys, Mike, and they check across the country how many people are rough sleeping. In 2010, there were 41 on average rough sleeping. It went up under the Tories. We had all that austerity. It went up. It's about when Burnham came in, it was about 268 people rough sleeping on an average night in Greater Manchester. It went down mainly because of that COVID, and there's some scheme to get people off the streets in COVID. Yeah. For the last 4 years, rough sleeping in Greater Manchester, Mike's been going up. Yeah. So if Burnham wants to come and give some flagship policy across the country, surely you stand outside Downing Street and you'd actually say something that you successfully delivered in Greater Manchester. The question is, Mike, have anybody come on your show and told you anything that Burnham actually did in Greater Manchester that was any good? I haven't seen anything yet.
Well, no, there isn't anything any good. It's all been completely and utterly kind of kiboshed by the lies and the kind of, the falsehoods and all the rest of it, because people tell me that the buses in Manchester don't work very well, in addition to costing 100 million quid's worth of taxpayers' money, which came from central government in the first place, right? The skyscrapers that he goes on about, having seen being built, was nothing to do with him whatsoever. And most of it is also student housing, and most of it is foreign investment, which means the money's going back out of the country. And when you talk about the debt that Manchester is in, 1.3 to 1.4 billion pounds supposedly is the real situation. And crime is I mean, if he's trying to make out, which he is, that Manchester's some kind of nirvana, have you been to Piccadilly Gardens? Because I have, and it's bloody horrible.
No, the one thing I will give Burnham, can't come and bash Burnham for all the time. I'm going to give him some credit there, because the most telling thing this week for me, Mike, was Starmer when he did his resignation, his final speech outside Downing Street. He couldn't even do that without reading his notes, Mike. And literally, somebody's finally gone in and programmed Starmer for his final bit. Stands at that lectern and he's literally just reading notes, and it's like he couldn't even remember what he's done over the last 2 years. I think he's been such a shambles. He needed somebody to write down a few of the things that he actually did that may have been okay over the last couple of years. But at least Burnham came out, Mike. he stood in front of he didn't have elected, he stood in front of the public and he managed to do a speech without notes. So
Yes.
that's one positive I'm going to give to
Well, he
Burnham.
is. I mean, he's obviously a much better communicator than Starmer, but, so is this banana. So I wouldn't worry about that, But one final one for you, a piece in The Sun, it says that 1 million people are now going to be dragged into paying more tax because 500,000 are going to be charged for the first time. What do you make of this idea of his to raise the threshold from 12,500, but I don't know where he's going to put it up to, but one of Reform's policies was to put that initial tax rate up to 20%.
Yeah, so I think, Mike, this is that fiscal drag that we were just talking about, because it hasn't moved for years and it hasn't been planned to move to Rachel Reeves for the next few years, because you always get that. Basically, people on lower income are allowed to earn as much money, up to a certain level without paying tax, which is £12,500. But then when you get obviously your pay rise, and the pensioners are starting to be caught up in some of this as well. So if you don't increase the level at the bottom, is when you get inflation and when your wages go up, normally back in the day, you'd put all the income tax thresholds up as well. And they haven't been doing that. So I'd welcome putting that up, but they'll have to pay for it somehow, because Reeves, literally, all their economic policies were bought off the fact that they weren't moving these income tax thresholds. So if you don't move the income tax thresholds, more and more people get caught up in these tax. And it's not just at the bottom end, Mike. You get a lot of people, especially middle class people, who start hitting into that cliff edge of going into the 40% tax. Burnham's talking again of introducing this 50% tax. You've got Lineker, haven't you, that you've been talking about this morning, coming out saying that, we want wealth taxes and we want to pay more tax. And you've touched on it. Lineker, if you want to pay more bloody tax, you can do it yourself. And you had that, I think, comment just now as well. I think so that case that Lineker had with HMRC, Mike. So it was basically, he was claiming he was self-employed when he was working for the BBC and when he was working for BT Sport. So he weren't paying the same amount of tax as what you would pay if he was actually an employee of the BBC. So that was the dispute over this £4.9 million. And I think in the end, it got settled privately. So we haven't got a clue exactly how much tax was paid. But you've got these virtual signatories like Lineker saying we want to pay more bloody tax. Well, you say he can pay as many tax as he wants. But the facts with Lineker is, and you can't argue with facts, is he could have paid more tax and said to the BBC, I want you to treat me as an employee. I want to pay as much tax as I should do from that. But no, he didn't. He went down this route of trying to claim he was self-employed when he was at the BBC. So they just basically all virtual signals. And the fact is, mate, Lineker and Burnham seem to be obviously mates. I'm surprised Lineker. I think you should get Lineker on the show, Mike and Andy Burnham, and you should do a proper interview rather than the two of them tallying up together.
Well, I dare say his next interview will be with Gary Neville. That'll be the next one he does with a couple of footballers. Anyway, Jamie, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Jamie Jenkins there reporting in on the terrible state of the economy and the terrible state of the new Andy Burnham government. It's only been in 4 days, and already it's all starting to unravel slightly. It's all becoming a little bit unclear exactly what he's doing, other than reversing everything that Keir Starmer did.